Hey, what's going on, everyone? Welcome to another episode of About Abroad, where it's my job to introduce you to people who have built amazing lives for themselves in various foreign corners of the globe. We're talking with expats and thought leaders about moving abroad, remote work, visas, and all the fun and practical knowledge that you need to know to follow in their footsteps. If you've ever dreamed of making a life for yourself overseas, maybe working remotely or embracing long-term travel, retiring or studying abroad, or even just taking a peek inside life beyond your borders, you've landed in the right place. This episode is brought to you by my good friends over at SaneBox. Remote knowledge workers are absolutely inundated with distractions these days. Emails, voicemails, Slack messages, and a million other pings that keep you from traveling the world, getting that first remote job, or moving to a new country. These days, to get ahead, we have to be great at prioritizing what really matters. In my case, that meant cutting down on the world's #1 productivity killer, email clutter. So I turned to SaneBox. You can think of SaneBox's AI as your own personal email box assistant. It gets to know your preferences and tendencies, then automatically filters out the distractions and sorts your emails for you into folders and priorities that fit your workflow. I personally love Sane Black Hole, where you can drag messages from annoying senders you never want to hear from again. They also offer Sane reminders to ping you if someone hasn't replied to you yet, alongside other automated files for anything from your receipts to your news feeds, all in one place. SaneBox works within any email client you're currently using and can be set up in a matter of minutes. Even better, About Abroad listeners can access a 14-day free trial and $25 in credit when they sign up at sanebox.com/abroad. Check out the link in the show notes for more details. My guest today is Sara Nathan. She is the CEO at Amigos International, which is an older than 50-year organization taking kids on trips around the world, predominantly in the Americas, helping them immerse and learn languages and get to know people from other cultures. So whether you're coming at this from the angle of perhaps having a child that might be interested in going on one of these trips, or perhaps taking an interest in being a host family, or even leading some of these trips yourself, I think you'll find Sara's story and the company's story really, really interesting. What's really inspiring is the way that Sara has sort of followed her path from having been a participant in Amigos when she was a youth and now to finally being the CEO of the company and everything in between. It was a lot of fun diving into the different programs they're doing around the world and the way that they're interacting and building communities with children from all different countries and the host families that get to take them in. A lot of fun, really inspiring work that they're doing. I really, really enjoyed this, so I hope you will too. Please help me in welcoming Sara to About Abroad. So where are you now? Are you actually in the Bay Area? That's where you're moving to, but are you there now?
I'm actually here in Houston, Texas, where Amigos was founded some 58 years ago. So I've been working with the organization for 12 years, first running our programs throughout Latin America, and then in this role as president and CEO for the last 8.5 years. But I will be relocating with Amigos to the San Francisco Bay Area, where we have a big presence on the West Coast.
Ah, okay. All right. Is there like so is the headquarters moved from Houston to there, or is it just gone remote, or what's the situation?
No, we have a central office here in Houston and have had one, since we were founded. We do have a small office out on the West Coast, but, we've gone, I think, with the times, Amigos has gone largely remote, so yes, we have people that opt to come into the office, but we have now team members scattered all throughout the Americas. So it's a much more nimble organization, bringing people on for their talent and passions for different roles. And I'll be heading out to the West Coast really to engage. We have a very big alumni base out there and community. So it's really work to expand our presence and reach in that region.
Oh, nice. How are you feeling about that? Are you excited about the move, like a fresh change, or what's the situation?
We're excited. I'm really excited. I mean, with a lot of the things you have to get in place, just as when one is moving abroad or anywhere, right? Moving from Texas to California, having some of the big things you have to check off, like, finding a place to live. And, we have 2 small children who are 2.5 and 5 and enrolling them in school, because if you don't, then you can't get any work done. I mean, so all of those kind of big things have been checked off. So we have our one-way plane tickets for May 28th, and we know where we'll be residing on the other side. So I grew up in the San Francisco Bay Area, so for me, it's a bit of a homecoming in that regard. But yeah, so it's bittersweet because I know I will be back and forth for work with Amigos, but Houston is just an incredibly diverse, vibrant place. It's a little bit, for many, off the radar in terms of, tourist travel, but really an amazing place to live. So we'll miss our, being around our community, living here in that, but at the same time, we're very excited. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, leaving one great place. I've heard that about Houston, that it's a great place to raise a family, great place to, like you can interact with people. It's a big city. I think it's one of those cities that people don't realize. It's like one of the top 10 biggest cities in the US, isn't it? Am I incorrect?
Last I checked, number 4.
Number 4, yeah.
And actually, in terms of languages spoken, countries represented, it's even more diverse than New York City. So people really don't realize how diverse it is in terms of just people from all over the globe. So it's a very international experience living here. And of course, for our organization, will continue to be a hub because it's, from here, it's, a 2-hour flight to Oaxaca, Mexico. It's, you can hop, 5 hours to, Ecuador. I mean, so there's that great advantage for us where it's located, obviously, in the region. We have easy access to just about everything. So
that's super cool. I do think it flies under the radar, and I'm a huge fan of finding those places within, like I'm also from the US, and so within the US and also internationally, finding that kind of like second, third tier place that maybe is off the beaten path a little bit, but like once you get there, you think like, why is this off the beaten path at all? This should be a spot that people are coming to, but for some reason or another, it's just kind of like falls between the cracks for people. And when you find those hidden gems, it's pretty exciting.
Yeah, I'll say many people know the Houston Intercontinental Airport passing through because it's a huge hub. Very very global landing spot for many people.
It's so interesting to hear you say, like you talk about the diversity. You already mentioned just talking about Houston, like some of the things you'll miss are really connected to the internationalness of that area. And it's not like you're going to San Francisco where you're not going to find some of that as well. But I mean, it's kind of interesting because it sounds like that's a very core part of your identity already. I mean, I know a bit about you. I know a little bit about your background, but it seems obvious that being surrounded by people from different countries kind of lights you up. And I think that's something we might share in common.
Oh, yes, absolutely. No, I feel very fortunate to, and I think once you get the spark of traveling and engaging, and whether it's meeting people here or, or going abroad, I think, but living abroad and traveling abroad and working abroad, volunteering abroad, you gain that appreciation for, people who are from everywhere else, from all over. And I think, the United States is such, I hate to use the word melting pot, but it is, it just brings together so many people from different cultures. I mean, I was in an Uber just the other night, and the driver was from Cuba, and I ended up in a conversation with him about his life, here. It's just, there's so much diversity. And I think that I feel very fortunate to have had experiences that kind of gave me the curiosity, to learn about others and kind of hear about ways of life and places that, I might have not been or, want to learn more about. So,
yeah, that's what I was actually kind of wanted to know is I wonder which one came first for you, because I've asked this about myself first. Like, was it that I just stumbled across some experience that kind of led me to believe like, oh, wow, actually, I'm very attracted to this idea of getting to know people from different countries and learning more about cultures? Or did I have that and did I seek it out? And I'm not sure if there's a chicken or the egg thing there. It's kind of hard to tell, but I don't know. Do you have like a clear answer to that?
So, I think I've given this a lot of thought too. The one thing growing up, we would go to my grandparents' house for Thanksgiving. And my grandfather he was a doctor and worked at the medical school at UCLA and had to travel for conferences, medical conferences and such and things like that. And so my grandmother would travel with him and they would build on different kind of excursions around these trips. And so, long story short, this was in the 80s. It dates me a little bit, but we would watch slideshows of their trips around the globe. So I remember very vividly, this is old, the old slide projector, not the modern, thing, but they would get out their slides. And I remember seeing, the Nazca lines in Peru from the airplane when they flew over in the 70s, and they got to go to China when it was just, really not open yet, So, we did this kind of as a thing just to kind of see different parts of the globe. So I think that helped normalize it a little bit for me, in terms of seeing places that were wildly different. And then when I was a teenager, around 13, I ended up, it was by happen chance, you just ended up on a youth trip going to the outskirts of Tijuana. And I lived in the San Francisco Bay Area, and I hadn't crossed the border. And if you haven't been, I mean, I can't say today, I mean, obviously many years have passed, but, you know, it was a completely different reality. It was the first time I'd been immersed in Spanish. You know, I just started studying it, and, you know, meeting the people there and having the chance to just see just across the border a very different, you know, reality in life was totally eye-opening. So by the time, and, you know, another opportunity came around, I think, but, you know, I was like, oh, that is something I want to do. But I do think that those slideshow sessions, you know, kind of exposure to the world at a time when we didn't have Zoom and technology like this and everything, I do think help, you know, kind of plant a seed, if you will.
Yeah, I think it's like kind of interesting now because we feel the world feels a lot smaller than it did then, right? Because we can just hop on a Zoom call and see somebody on the other side of the world, or we see people's social media accounts or whatever. So you're kind of like getting a glimpse into the world in real time all the time. And I think, you know, you back up 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, that definitely was not the case. So these things felt more inaccessible, and now they feel very accessible. But I think something that's kind of cool to remember is that the world is massive. Like there's so many places the little corners of the world that no matter how much you travel and how much you think you've seen, you likely have seen just a very small percentage of the world. And there's something kind of rejuvenating for me about that. But I can totally relate to your situation there in a way, because I was born to my parents are a pilot and a flight attendant who had traveled the world until I was born. And the funny thing though is that, like, so with that in mind, I was thinking like, oh, I kind of have that in my blood, maybe, like I'm supposed to travel the world. But we never left the US until I was 18. I had never left the US. We traveled a decent amount in the US, but never went outside the country. But I always had it in me, like, I got to get out and see stuff. I was kind of like fascinated by it. And I went to a very international middle school, high school. There was just a lot of different ethnicities, people from a lot of different backgrounds. And so I was kind of like always immersed in this little bubble of internationalness. I don't know. It always called to me, and I find it kind of interesting to reflect back on this now, because you and I are both involved in a very international world in what we do. And there were some roots there, I think.
Absolutely. And where was the first place that you traveled to?
I went to Australia when I was 18. I saved up all throughout my senior year of high school and just dove in and went abroad for a couple weeks, I think almost a month. And it was amazing. And then I was like completely addicted.
Yeah. Yeah. Just takes one trip.
Yeah, it does. And so your first trip was to Tijuana.
Yes, the first time I left the United States was to Tijuana. And then when I was in high school, I learned about Amigos, actually. And so I signed up. I was too young. I had to wait another year. So did another youth trip to Mexico in the meantime. And then went to Costa Rica for 8 weeks after my junior year of high school. We were working with the Ministry of Education there and lived with a host family more towards the Nicaraguan border. So we were out in a small community with 17 families, you know, about an hour from Ciudad Quesada. And anyway, so lived there for that summer. And I came back, and, you know, my friends who had joined the program had gone to Mexico and the Dominican Republic and other places. And so that spark continued, and I decided I wanted to go back for a second summer. And I was encouraged by the training director of the Amigos program at the time to try Brazil, which terrified me because I wanted to go to Brazil, but then there's a whole new language and studying Spanish. So, but several friends of mine and I decided that let's try for Brazil. And so I took night Portuguese classes, you know, in advance to trying for, you know, Portuguese for Spanish speakers. And before college, went to northeastern Brazil to Rio Grande do Norte and the interior of Natal. So we were about, 2.5 hours to the interior in Brazil. And that was an extraordinary experience. Of course, the first week I could barely understand anything. And then it just, you just click. It just clicks, you know, and I think it helped that I had a host family with 7 host brothers and sisters and my host parents. You know, we're all in a small town. I mean, this is 1998. A lot has changed in this region, you know, since then. In fact, my host family found me on Facebook a few years ago. And so it's like, you know, one of the reasons I keep Facebook is for, you know, these global connections that we have. But Brazil was an amazing, but it was also a very small community. I mean, there were 13 families at the time. You know, well water, you know, was, you know, brought on on donkeys, and the TV was powered by a car battery, and it was a farming community, really far out there. And we were working with the Ministry of Health on a project there. And my host brother was a agente de saúde, a health worker. And
is that how you say it in Portuguese?
Yes. Yeah. So
wow.
Anyway, it kind of goes from there. But those were, as a teen, the experiences of kind of living and, being immersed in another country and living with a host family. And with that, you really learn the local customs and, how things work and in a very quick fashion, right? Really, really incredible experiences. And later I was able to work with Amigos actually in college. And I spent overall 2-3 month stints in the Dominican Republic, and then ran our program in Paraguay, which was in an interior department of product, but spent a lot of time in and out of Asunción. And so very different places, but incredible experiences getting to work and meet with a lot of extraordinary people. Yeah.
What an incredible way to spend your summer. You were doing this at a relatively young age. Did you feel that was like normal at that time? Like when when was your first trip? Like how old were you roughly?
When I did the Costa Rica trip, 16, 17, Brazil. And then to work on the teams, our kind of the teams that run the programs, you have to have had at least 1 year of college experience or 1 year kind of outside of high school now, I would say, is probably a more appropriate thing to think about. But so, it became normal because I was familiar with it, and there's a whole community of people that are engaged, in this type of work. But, a lot of my friends thought I was a little bit crazy, taking off, because actually between my stints in the Dominican Republic, I did a year abroad studying at the Universidad de Barcelona in Spain. So going from the Dominican Republic, a very, I love both very deeply. Dominican Republic is, everyone invites you into coffee. It's very open and vibrant. And I got to Barcelona, and everyone just doesn't invite you in for coffee. It might take a year to go to someone's house, so it's, you see these cultural differences, and it's just fascinating. But even in Barcelona, you can find a Dominican enclave. Right. So I found restaurants in the Gothic neighborhood, the Barri Gothic, that were owned by people from the community that I lived in the Dominican Republic. So, the world, even then, that was 20 years ago, intersects.
What a cool thing, right? Like you have this connection to, you're an American from the Bay Area, you're in all the way on the other side of the world in Barcelona, and you have a connection with the people who run the Dominican restaurant because of the time you've spent there. Like something about that little triangle of connections just lights me up.
Yeah, it's really, truly amazing. I think even friendships that I have too. I remember going to a class in Barcelona. It was about international economics. And I sat down, and the girl next to me asked me, what was I doing here? Why was I in Spain? And anyway, I told her a little bit about what I'd done. And I mentioned I'd been in, the DR in Brazil. And she's like, oh, do you like to dance forró? Which is a very common dance there. Because she'd spent time in Brazil, and we ended up going to a Brazilian concert in Barcelona and are still friends to this day, and she's now married to a Californian living in Berkeley, California, which is where I had come from, where I had been living before we met. So yes, all these different kind of intersections are fascinating, and they seem to just kind of pile up, as you explore the world more.
Yeah, I find a lot of people that listen to the show, or even like guests that have come on the show, they sort of a red thread that connects a lot of them is especially with people that have moved abroad for extended period of time. One of their big fears was their community, how am I going to make friends, or I'm not going to be surrounded by people that I know and things like that. And what I always find is that just like in that situation, you start making connections so quick when you're living abroad for, living however you'd want to define it, if that's a month or a year or longer, you're there, and there's some instant connection with people who are also not from there, and you can't help but just immediately start connecting. And then often the cultures are very open and welcoming to foreigners, and they want to get to know you too. And it almost becomes easier in a way. I almost feel like it's easier to make those connections when you find yourself in a foreign place.
Yeah, I would absolutely agree with that. And that I think in our work at Amigos, the relationships and the connections that are built for our students when they go through, and their host family members, the friends that they make, like those connections are so powerful. And what's amazing too, now they maintain those relationships with WhatsApp and, whatnot. For us, we were sending snail mail still, I mean, back and forth. But it's amazing to see those connections persist and how powerful they are, for all of our students. So
I just find it so cool that you started out as like a customer and like now you're the CEO. Like there's something like really cool about that you're like, you started there as like, yeah, I'm going to go on a summer trip to Costa Rica, and like fast forward to today and like you're the CEO of the company. Like that doesn't happen every day. That's really cool.
No, I was very and very not. I mean, to be totally honest with you, I came to Texas from Berkeley. I was living in Berkeley, working at UC Berkeley. Drove down here in 2009, and I said, well, I can do anything for 3 to 4 years, because I was actually directing our programs then. And what got me fired up to make the drive and move here was that Amigos was wanting to find ways to really bring more Latin American youth into the organization. So it used to be once an organization. Yes, we are serving youth from the United States who are traveling to the region of the Americas, but our formal name is Amigos de las Americas, Amigos of the Americas. And so for us, the idea that it's only U.S. students traveling abroad, it became sort of antiquated, right? And that, no, the vision is actually really youth from the region also getting involved, leaving their communities and going to go be immersed in other communities and, be able to serve in other countries and such. So that got me motivated to come down to Texas and be a part of this organization at a time when everyone worked in Houston. So everyone, if you worked at Amigos, you were at the particular location, the office in Houston, Texas. But that has since changed. But, in any case, I came to run our programs, and our board of directors invited me to step into this role in 2014, early 2014. And, the things that make you nervous are good things in life, right? You're like, wow, like, can I do it? And it's been such an incredible journey. And I never thought I would be leading the organization through a pandemic. We prepared in our work, when you travel, there's all kinds of health things to be prepared for. I mean, we had, chikungunya and all these different, things come and go, and, but been a kind of a wild couple of years. But I'm really happy to say that we're going through it, and Amigos has figured out a way to say, yes, we can still have an impact, and people can travel and we can do it safely. And, but there was a time where we weren't quite sure how it was all going to shake out, in 2020.
I can imagine. I mean, I literally, well, I say I can't imagine, but next thing out of my mouth is I can't imagine. Like that had to be such a tumultuous couple years. I mean, when the way business travel was affected, the way that international travel, I'm planning a group of 100 people getting together from 35 different countries, and it would be a challenge on any given day, but with COVID, it just 10x's that challenge. And so I can't, that's one organization where everybody's kind of like rowing in the same boat already. And it's quite challenging. I can't imagine when you're dealing with teenagers and families in all kinds of different countries, the logistics must be incredible and then just magnified because of COVID.
Yes. Oh my goodness. Well, I will never forget March 13th, the day that a lot of the world, at least in the United States, was the day that shutdown started to happen. And, that was, and we decided to suspend our programming, our in-person programming. At the time we had so we have really a spectrum of programs that range from 2 weeks in length for middle school students to up to 9 months in length for high school graduates. And so our GAP program was ongoing in Uruguay and Ecuador. And we thought, well, we might have a few weeks before we need to pull them back and get them back to wherever their homes were, our original homes. And I remember talking to my director of programs. I thought, well, maybe actually we might have to pull them out sooner. And then literally the next morning, the president of Ecuador said international flights are suspended as of Monday. Luckily, we retain control of the flight for, our travelers, which based on past experience has been very helpful because we are able to more nimbly move them because Amigos controls the ticket. A lot of times people will buy their own tickets, which is great. You can do it with miles, you can do everything else. But in these kinds of instances where we were able to work with our agent and move and get everybody, literally they said their goodbyes to their host families and were on the plane by 1 o'clock in the morning that night. And everybody got home, left Uruguay, left Ecuador. So, I think then, we had to pivot entirely. I mean, we shut down our summer programming for the first time in 56 years at the time. And and decided and were able to pivot. I mean, we were fortunate to get federal support, and that gave us a bridge to be able to then, pivot into virtual programming, which was amazing. I mean, on one program, we even had virtual host families, which was totally new. I mean, who would have thought that you could try that? I mean, where, the host families would do different activities. It was actually even like cooking. They would learn to cook. Our students would learn to cook different types of cuisine, like local cuisine, and they would do exchange both ways, like in that type of thing. So team had a whole number of activities, but it was amazing to see it's different, but those cross-cultural connections happening, and albeit a totally different format when really at that time the world was very shut down, for the most part. But we were able to bring back in-person programming, starting with the GAP program in Costa Rica in 2021 in the spring semester, just with different protocols and with COVID protocols and trying to keep everybody healthy and safe. And the thing that's been, of course, more limited has been that direct engagement. I mean, I think we're at a point in the pandemic where obviously our protocols are still changing with regards to masks and this and that, but we're able to run programs where students are still able to get out into the world, and we're able to do host families again, and that kind of thing. So it's been a definite journey. But I think that the whole idea for us, the work that we do is really to build cultural humility, build personal leadership, and also really light that spark and instill a commitment towards the community, right? We all have our nuclear families, our own personal worlds, but really providing that seed to like inspire youth to think about the world beyond their own kind of social reality, whatever that is. And that's the work that we do. And I think part of the silver lining with all this is that we were able to imagine and test out different ways to reach those goals, and to make that happen without anyone ever getting on an airplane. Of course, we will also bring back we're doing now in-person programming, and people are getting on planes. We'll have about 550 students this summer, this year, which is still lower than pre-pandemic, but we're on the right trajectory now. So it's exciting to see people getting out into the world again. So a lot of lessons through this time.
And what awesome education for the people, all the different entities that are participating in this, like the people the kids going on the trips, the hosts that are getting to experience people coming from abroad, the people, the directors, or the people you have in between. Actually, it might be helpful for me, and maybe hopefully for the audience too, like to just kind of describe the different entities involved here, like all the different parties involved in creating one of these experiences. Maybe we can kind of like go through an example of, a trip that goes to Costa Rica and who's involved and then what they're doing there.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have our students learn about Amigos through a whole variety of ways, but we have an outreach team that works with educators and schools and whatnot. So you can hear about it directly, from your classroom. Being that we're almost 60 years old, we do have a big alumni network, so we do get a lot of referrals that way. But for students, let's say you join and they select to go to or Costa Rica, or let's say our Santa Elena project in Ecuador. They sign up, and there's a training program, and that can be done online or virtually, and that's run by our team, by our trainers. In country, Amigos always works with a local host agency or one or more host agencies. So we never kind of show up on our own, and, just Amigos coming door to door, So we work with local civil society organizations, work with international nonprofits. We work with government ministries, so like ministries of health, education. And this particular, like say in Santa Elena, we partner with a international nonprofit called Plan International, and they're we've been partnering with them since 1998, I think, and we've in various countries. And they do have community development programming in different departments of all the of different countries. And so we work with them, and they actually identify the communities, and they help us look for host families. And we work very much with their local staff. And the partner agencies that we work with see great value in the youth development, the youth leadership training and engagement, because they're doing youth work too. So we actually have students that might be coming in from abroad or from another part of Ecuador, but the agency also has, youth programming that they work with. So they see great value add in the very type of cultural exchange and like learning that we bring to the table, because the youth that are of those communities have the opportunity to meet people from all different places as well. So it's very much, our partners see it as a reciprocal relationship in that sense. And then Amigos brings also funding. So a very big part of our work is doing local service as well. So, and we have a approach where it's not Amigos bringing ideas from the outside, but really working with the partners and the communities to look at what are service initiatives that are really largely youth driven. So the youth have our volunteers and local youth have the opportunity to really, learn by doing and creating a local initiative. But very much our partner agencies are fundamental in terms of where we go, how we do, and then the program theme. So the program themes vary. I mean, they can be public health education project. We have a lot of programs right now focused on, and this is just, I think, with the issues that we're facing with regards to the environment, sustainability, climate change, our other themes, food security in the communities many of the communities where we are working and who host us have indigenous communities or, maybe one or more. So there's, a lot of learning about indigenous rights. And anyway, so that's a big piece of it. Our host families are, an incredible part of the experience. We have some programs that don't have host families. Those are the kind of what we see as more of like the entry to Amigos programs, and then some of the longer programs. Yeah. So, but for our longer programs and for our GAP program, everyone lives with host families. And yes, they're an incredible part of the organization. And that's a really important piece. And then, of course, our local staff. So we have staff in country that we hire who work permanently for us. And then we also have seasonal teams that work in the organization. And then back in Houston, well, it's not really Houston anymore. It's kind of we have our HQ team, which is spread out. We have 24-hour health and safety on-call system. So that actually for the summer program starts in 10 days and goes through the summer. And, with that, we have a whole team of medical doctors who are on call all summer long for whatever issue. Pandemic is one thing, but just in regular travel, anything happens. And that's, so thankfully we have a lot of, I think our systems have been very well developed over all these years to be prepared to, respond to whatever it might be. Something like, that people, like a monkey bite, or something. It's like, you just you never know.
A monkey bite. I love that. That's the first thing that came to your mind because that has happened.
It has happened. We had one volunteer get a rash because they were walking outside. The lights in the town went out. You can't make this stuff up sometimes, but the lights in the town went out. And so everybody was outside of their houses trying to figure out what happened to the line, and a sloth had knocked it down. So so she was walking around in grass and got a rash because they were outside and not paying attention to the grass that they were walking through. But you can blame it on the sloth, So that's unusual stories, but ones you don't forget, really.
That makes for a good story to come back to high school over this. What'd you do this summer vacation? Well, you went to Florida. I encountered a sloth that turned out my power and I got a rash.
Yeah. And here in the US, we do we have a lot of different partnerships. So with universities and schools, and we have a program that's actually funded through the Department of State, through the Bureau of Education and Cultural Affairs, funds Latin American youth who come to the United States and U.S. students to go to countries in South America. So that the service work is done back at home once you complete your exchange. So but a lot of great organizations, and particularly, working with organizations like College Track, who work to, provide pathways for youth to go into college, working with agencies like that who help identify amazing candidates for the programs and such. So we're always looking for new partners to work with and, get the word out about these experiences. There are a lot of options today, so the world is, there's plethora of different things people can do. I think for the student that really wants to get out and be immersed, Amigos is a really great choice for that.
Yeah. These are lengthier. I know you have shorter ones, but your shorter version is like 2 weeks, it sounds like, right?
Yeah.
And what is the span, like 2 to 8 weeks?
Yes, for the summer program, 2 to 8 weeks. And then the programs, the academic gap year programs, you can do a semester or a full academic year. We do have organizations approach us for custom opportunities. So not since the pandemic, but prior to that, we were doing a winter break program for students from American University, things like that. So people will come to us with ideas for for programming, recognizing that we have the team that can put it together. And so those are exciting, exciting things to do. But yes, it's 2 weeks to eight weeks in the summertime. And, the 2-week programs are specifically for the middle school students. So that's a newer program for us. But what's amazing is that our middle school students, I remember seeing our first cohort, members of our first cohort come back after we launched the program. And it was just amazing to see how, just like my experience in Tijuana for a week, kind of it was like the spark, was there. It was just amazing to see. So I call it it's really a spectrum of different options, if you will, for people to choose depending on what's right for them based on their, experience. So yeah.
Man, I have so many questions. All right. So, and I'm trying to envision it. Roughly how many people are in a cohort or a group? If I'm sending my kid on a 1 month long trip to wherever it might be, let's pick another country just so we give people an idea of where these might be going.
Panama. Yeah, Panama. So our 3-week programs have 20 students in them, which also includes youth from Latin America. So if you're doing a program in Panama, you're going to have youth from the country also in the program. But in that program, it's a bit more group oriented. So that's, again, more of the kind of entry programs for Amigos, if you will. If you join, let's say, our 6-week program right now we're not running this, but pre-pandemic, if you were joining our 6-week program in Peru, for example, you would have between probably 40 and 50 students arrive with you, and you do a training in the capital, the city, the headquarters city of the region. So, and we've worked in Cusco, for example. So you'd be there. In our deeper immersion programs, you're actually assigned to work with one or two other students from the cohort, and you go off in a trio, or you're just with one other student, or another, 3 of you go out to a community on your own. So it's just the 2 or 3 of you actually out in the community, and our team is doing community visits, during the weeks and visiting and making sure everything is going well. But in terms of the group experience, you're really with that, 1 or 2 other students from Amigos, one or 2 other volunteers.
Wow.
So that's where you do come together with the big cohort once, usually in the middle, for a day or 2 to kind of exchange experiences. And of course, there's a culmination at the end. But by and large, you're really out in community and living and just experiencing life and working on your project with your partner agency and the local, community members. So that model is of kind of the community placements was very difficult obviously at earlier times in the pandemic, but now we're bringing it back, and it's also been amazing to see. The vaccination rates in the countries. That people are learning to manage. It's not over yet, obviously, but manage life with the COVID and the pandemic. So we're, able to do this again.
So I'm so glad to hear that, because I think it's such an awesome opportunity for kids of this age to have this experience. And it's a shame to have them miss out on this, especially for the ones that either have that, desire to have this international experience, or the ones that, might not get a chance to stumble across this real genuine interest that they have in the greater world, kind of, shut people in for a couple years. And so it's really nice to hear that it's starting to come back. We'll be right back to the show after a quick break for a note from our sponsor. This season is brought to you by my good friends over at Insured Nomads. They're the absolute best in the business when it comes to providing health, travel, and medical insurance for nomads, expats, and really just all forms of world travelers. I know insurance is often something that's overlooked when we're fantasizing about traveling the world, but it's absolutely necessity that we address this, because often the policy you have in your home country isn't going to cover you while you're abroad. And it's also a requirement, as a lot of people may not realize, to actually buy private travel or expat insurance, as it's called sometimes, to obtain a visa or even enter certain countries. So fortunately, there are companies like Insured Nomads to help us with this. Not only do they have excellent coverage and great prices, but they're also providing a first-class experience with additional perks and best-in-class technology via their app. It's an amazing experience. I can't recommend it enough. Now, this is a company that was built by world travelers for world travelers. So they know what it's like to find yourself in a difficult medical situation abroad, and they want to keep you from having that same bad experience. So the next time you're planning a trip abroad, whether it's for a week or a lifetime, check out Insured Nomads via the link in the show notes. Hey guys, so many of you write in asking how to support the show best. And if you are listening and made it this far into the episode, then I'm going to presume that perhaps you're one of those people that wants to help. So if that's the case, the best thing you could do right now would be to open up the app that you're currently using to listen to this episode. Go to the little arrow thing that allows you to share, select it, and share it to one of your social media networks. That would be a huge, huge help. You can feel free to tag me at DC Warrington, and I'll slap you a virtual high five from wherever I am in the world. Thank you so much for the support. We really appreciate it, and I hope you enjoy listening to the rest of this episode. I was actually really curious about something. What is the level of Spanish? Like if a lot of these programs have people, obviously you're often going to Latin American countries or bringing people from Latin America up to North America, but like what is the level of competency for middle school students going abroad for the first time? Do they learn it while they're there, or do they have to have a certain level before going?
Yeah, so for the programs where we have community placements and host family stays, so the longer programs and in the summer, and then our gap programs, though we do have a Spanish requirement. So typically that's 2 years of high school Spanish. Most of our students have more than that, just given their age, since they've been studying Spanish for more years than that. But it does give us the opportunity, because some students study other languages. So it gives us the ability to say, okay, well, if you've had studied a Romance language, then maybe, it's a little bit easier to pick up Spanish and study. So we can, make accommodations, especially if people will be doing their own training kind of in the year advance of their summer. We call them the Discover and Explore programs, the kind of the more group model. We have varying levels of Spanish, but some we don't require Spanish. It literally can be a introduction, but for where we really have those more independent host family, and community placements, more akin to like a Peace Corps volunteer at a younger age, for those we do have language requirements.
I imagine it's a great place to go to brush up on your Spanish. Like if your level probably skyrockets pretty quickly, one at that age, and then two, like if you've got just a base when you're forced into it and immersed in it, I imagine the students often come back just having experienced a whole new level of language learning. Is that fair to assume?
For me, it's incredible. Yeah, the confidence building, because as living abroad and when you're learning another language, so much you learn to communicate, through the language, and you learn the vocabulary as you go, but also there's so much through body language and expression. And, so what we see is a language learning, but also just an incredible level of increase in confidence from our students that go have these experiences with that, because they're, having to put themselves out there. But people are by and large, throughout the Americas, in our experience, people are so incredibly warm and helpful. I hate to generalize so broadly, but really with, in terms of learning and practicing, I think people are very supportive, community members, in terms of, helping work with our volunteers who struggle with a word or this or that. And then we do have for our GAP students, they do study. So they have Spanish courses, and they basically come in and do a test, and they're placed into different levels of Spanish based on where, on their level that they're at when they come into the program.
Oh, okay. All right. That makes sense. Actually, so that brings me to a question I wanted to ask. We've touched on this a little bit, but like, what is I know I'm kind of like asking about a bunch of different programs all at once, so it might be hard to generalize, but what does the day-to-day look like for the students? Like we've talked about projects, and there's the Spanish language learning. Sometimes you're staying with a host family. And so I'm just curious, like if I had a 13-year-old and I'm sending them to Panama on one of these programs, I'm wondering, like, what do I tell my friends what little Chase is doing while he's down there in Panama?
Yeah. So in terms of a kind of typical Amigos program, the volunteers, part of it obviously is living with the host family and kind of participating in the household and those types of things. But in terms of the actual engagement in the community, so it does depend on the project in terms of what the specific service work might look like. For example, in Costa Rica, we work in the national parks. There's a lot of work actually out in the parks, trail work, that kind of thing, together with local youth. So the first week, we always say, especially in our immersion programs, the first week is largely spent getting to know your community. So we have whole kind of training programs around this, but really getting to know the organizations in the community, the local leaders, and our staff makes introductions to our volunteers volunteers, two key players in the community when they arrive so that they can get plugged in. And they work with local volunteers or, local students in the community to map out, to pick a project, basically develop an initiative that they want to carry out in the community. And that really can varies depending on the local community. So, for example, on Ecuador, in our Chimborazo project, volunteers were on a social enterprise project. So in each community, our Amigos volunteers work with the local youth to basically develop a business enterprise concept. And then there's a kind of almost like a Shark Tank competition towards the end. And then projects are funded, so whether it's a jewelry making business, I was there actually to see some of the planning workshops, prior to the pandemic, the year prior to the pandemic. You see planning workshops that for, the enterprises and, some examples jewelry making. A big one is guinea pig farms, those kinds of things. So the actual project does, is dependent on what program you choose to go on. So, students will look at that in terms of what attracts them, as well. So it does vary a lot, but I think, of course, for us, public health education has been a big theme over the years. Amigos started really as a public health doing volunteer service in public health, actually in a different pandemic, in the polio pandemic, with volunteers going to Honduras to work. To do, our volunteers were traveling with medical teams from here to go do polio vaccinations, Honduras. That's how actually Amigos started. But more recently, it's been, areas like working with, for example, in Panama, we work with the Ministry of Health. And so our volunteers will work with local youth to do health education campaigns with kind of the youth in the communities. So, around sanitation, around, healthy lifestyles, healthy eating, all those kinds of things. So it does vary. But if you go on the website and you'll see, the projects and kind of the themes and what that will look like specifically in every program.
I'm really so impressed with the depth and the different layers of the experience. It's not just about where you're going; it's about the project that you're going to be working on and the host family situation. There's so many elements that go into creating this experience, and I can just imagine putting myself back in that age group, thinking like this would be such a great way to spend a summer or to spend a spring break or something like that. It's an amazing thing you're offering. And it brings me to a thought that I'm having, is that there might be people listening who either themselves or know someone who may want to actually get involved in as a, I don't know if volunteer is the right word, or like a leader, like within the group. Maybe someone listening is not 13, but they're 19 or 25 or something. Do you have people in those positions that are kind of like leading these groups?
Yes, absolutely. We hire project staff teams every year. So these are seasonal roles that are supported by our permanent staff members who work on our programs team, who lead the projects, actually. It's a really fun experience because you get to work actually directly with our local partner organizations. So, you work with the Ministry of Health representatives, you work with, Planner National or whatnot. And, you manage the budget, you work with your teammates, you gain a lot of professional skills, and it's just a wonderful opportunity. So we actually just did our annual staff training this year. It was done by Zoom. It was a great training done by Zoom, and our staff are from all over the Americas. So right now, about half of our staff are from the region, a little more actually this year, I think. And it's just a wonderful group. So we really look for people who, have worked with youth, have experience potentially working in Latin America, working with nonprofits, working in community development. So yes, and we do, those roles come open usually, late fall, I want to say every year. So definitely something to keep an eye out on. So people can certainly take a look at our join our team page for opportunities that we have right now. We are presently hiring for we have several AmeriCorps Vista member openings right now for anyone who's interested in a volunteer role. Of course, there's the monthly, stipend that comes with that. So looking for a couple people to join our team and work with us for the upcoming year. So that's another immediate opportunity. And then of course, our GAP programs, we do hire team members as well. So that's another piece. But
what does GAP program mean, actually? I feel like I kind of have an idea, but I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah, I would say we've used the word GAP program. So usually it's that defined as that year between high school and college. So taking a year off before you would go to college. They're also known, I mean, really as bridge years. We get stuck in the trap of keeping with gap because that's what people search for. But I think a bridge year is a better terminology, but it's less searched for in some ways. But yeah,
I'm a huge fan of the gap year thing, by the way. Like I think it's like an awesome thing. I wish it was more culturally prevalent, and for us coming from the US, it is in other parts of the world. And I think it can be an amazing thing. I was just not familiar with it in terms of like being structured by like a third party organization. And I think that's so awesome because that can give it some power to that year. I mean, it can really kind of take it to another level as opposed to just taking the year and traveling and just, trying to figure it out as you go.
Yeah. No, I think they're both great options. And yeah, with the Amigos Gap program, our students do internships. So we find placements for them in different organizations and, do our best to align their internship placement with their own kind of career and kind of academic interests. So that's an important part of that program. And of course, our team leads the students on excursions to different parts of the country. And so there is that, but it is also, quite independent, but we do the, host family selection and training and troubleshooting and, support with internships and mentorship and guidance and set up the Spanish language programming. And then by and large, there to really support students because, gap, these programs semester, it's 4.5 months, or 9 months long in terms of program. It's a long time. So of course, there's a lot of mentorship and support provided by the staff team as students are, experiencing that, in-depth immersion over, a longer time frame. But yes, our gap, and for Amigos, it's just been amazing because we have programming year round. And so we call it Amigos 365. It's, just making sure that we're present all year round, and we have programming all year and it really strengthens our presence in every place that we work. So
it's incredible. Well, I'll let you go. I know I've kept you a bit long here, and I appreciate all the information you're going to share. Or that you've shared. I was going to share earlier that my wife did several trips down to Mexico building houses when she was in middle school and high school. And they were some of the most transformative trips in her life. She still talks about them to this day, and it's kind of stuck with her what she learned in those. So I'm a big believer in the experience that the youth are getting. And I think it can be a great way, hosting people from abroad, if you're going to be a host family or leading these trips, can be a great way as you progress through your years to continue to stay involved. So, if people are listening and kind of interested from any one of those three angles, I think there's a lot of opportunity there to immerse yourself or to foster immersion in international cultures. And there's just so much that can be learned by us interacting with each other and starting that at a young age. So I'm really, really thankful for what you guys are doing and really loved learning more about Amigos today.
Oh, thank you so much, Chase. It's been so fun to talk to you. So thank you for the opportunity to come on.
Yeah, you're welcome. We'll put links and all that in the show notes, but while people are listening, where can people follow along, either follow along you or follow along the company and the website and all that? And we'll put it all in the show notes, but while people are listening, I'd love to let them know where they can go.
Yeah, absolutely. So the website is, it's amigosinternational.org. So that's definitely a place to go. We're on Instagram. It's, amigos_Americas on Instagram. That's really just a great spot to see videos. We're also on YouTube as well. There's some great videos actually from this last cycle on YouTube. And I'd have to pull up the name, the handle here. I should know that off the top of my head. But
don't worry, we'll drop it all in the show notes anyway. So as long as people know they can go to YouTube and find you, then that's great.
Wonderful.
Yeah, that's I think that's a great way to live vicariously through. I'm jealous of the kids getting to do this stuff. I want to go back and be a kid again one more time.
I am too. And I know for any listeners that have children, I mean, our session B, our later summer programs the final deadline will be May 19 for this summer. And then for our gap semester in the fall, our application deadline is in June timeframe. But still some spots left, although most programs are very full, but still a few opportunities for any people who are last minute planning.
The demand is so high. I mean, you don't have problems filling that. I don't know. That makes me feel warm and fuzzy inside that the kids want to go do this stuff. That's great.
Yeah, no, it's great to see the interest returning. It really is.
Oh, well, Thank you for what you're doing, Sarah. Thank you so much for sharing an hour of your time with us. We know you have a lot going on, so we really appreciate it. And I look forward to continuing to follow along.
Wonderful. All right. Thank you so much, Chase. Appreciate it.
Thanks for tuning in today from wherever you are in the world. Once again, I'm Chase, and this has been another episode of About Abroad. For those of you wondering how you can best support the show, I have made it super simple for you. Just go over to the show notes of the episode that you just finished listening to and click on one of the two following links. aboutabroad.com/newsletter to get our monthly newsletter, no spam, guaranteed, or ratethispodcast.com/aboutabroad, where you can quickly and easily leave a review for the show. It's not just important to me, it also helps more wanderers just like you find us. Finally, don't forget to subscribe on your podcast platform of choice, and we will see you again next week. Thanks again. Hasta luego, amigos.